Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name's Carter Walker. I love talking about movies, music, comics, and games. Tonight I just saw Eli Roth's new slasher movie, Thanksgiving, which is the first Thanksgiving-themed horror movie I think I've ever seen. So that was cool to cross that off the list. I know there's the Thanksgiving movies. I've never seen those before, but I have seen the Grindhouse trailer for Thanksgiving. It was quite a while ago on the internet. I haven't seen those movies admittedly, but this is something that I was kind of looking forward to. Eli Roth, he's an interesting filmmaker. He made the Hostel movies, Cabin Fever, Green Inferno, and then he also made Death Wish. He stars in Inglourious Bastards. He's an interesting guy. His movies are, they range from people really liking them to people really disliking them, almost like every filmmaker. But I feel like he's very extreme just because of what he goes for in his movies, which is extreme over the top gore and interesting dialogue to say. He has a very interesting sense of humor that he likes to put in his movies. So Thanksgiving, of course, directed by Eli Roth, like I mentioned, stars Patrick Dempsey and Addison Rae. I believe I'm saying that. But it is Plymouth, Massachusetts, the town where Thanksgiving started. A year after a tragedy, and a killer that's masked starts attacking people who were connected to the tragedy. And so, pretty much has a pretty decent setup for a slasher movie, like a murder mystery slash. Starting right out with the positives, I actually really enjoyed the killer, John Carver. It was fun, it's interesting, and a big compliment that I can give this movie is that it knows exactly what it is, and it totally leans into that. So Eli Roth makes this Thanksgiving slasher movie. You go to the theaters, you see the trailer, you see the poster for Thanksgiving, and you're like, I can't believe they're making a movie about a killer around Thanksgiving who wears a pilgrim mask, dresses up as a pilgrim. It sounds so silly. And when you watch the movie, it is silly. And I think it plays to the movie's best strengths to where it knows it's silly, it knows it's goofy, and it teeters on almost a B movie. And everyone in it, you can tell, is just kind of giving it their all and having a really good time with what they've been given. And the script smartly balances genuine tension and horrific moments along with a guy wearing a pilgrim mask killing people in Plymouth, Massachusetts. It's goofy and it knows what it is, but it also kind of borders those two tones, two vibes very, very well. There's moments in this movie that almost border on genuine parody, but then there's also some of the most gross kills I've seen, just effects that just linger, and I was like, wow. And there's a few scenes that are actually very, very tension filled, very well done, very suspenseful. Eli Roth, he's been at this for quite a long time, so he's very well versed in his cinematography, his directing style, the way he blocks his scenes, the way he, instructs the actors and is able to get exactly what he wants from them. So it's not like it's some first time filmmaker accidentally telling someone like Patrick Dempsey, okay, now do it again, and say your lines louder or say you're more angry, be angry. And it's not someone like that. It's Eli Roth, who's been in the game for quite some time. So watching someone like that create a movie where you can tell he's just having a ton of fun. I always love when filmmakers who have been around for so long, like directors. Eli Roth maybe isn't a big name unless you're a horror fan, but watching someone like him just kind of create something that they're very passionate about, that's just very fun and goofy, but also very well made and executed, it's always a good time. And I really enjoyed it with Thanksgiving. And I know that me saying it's like teetering like a B movie, it's almost parody. I thought that it does a really great job of balancing the tone of being very funny, but also not becoming a comedy, if that makes sense. There's certain characters in this that are just so over the top douchey, that are just so evil. At the very beginning, there's a Black Friday sale going on where people are injured, and it's all over a waffle iron. And so it's very satirical and it very much pokes fun at everything, but in a way where it comes off genuine and it comes off in a way where it doesn't undermine the tension and kills in the movie. Because sometimes there's horror flicks out there where the comedy, they go a little overboard with the comedy or with the slapstick goofiness, and it ends up undermining some of the tension. And don't get me wrong, the kills in here are so over the top sometimes. People laughed in our theaters, but there's also moments of oh my gosh, I can't believe they just did that, to where it's very effective, and I loved what they did with it. And honestly, this movie is just very well executed, very well made. The cinematography is gorgeous and the lighting is fantastic, especially in some scenes in a high school where I thought it was very, very exceptionally shot, to where long hallways, and it just feels like it's so big and anything could happen, anything could be behind those corners. And another in a house that's being remodeled. I just thought that The lighting and especially the set design, set dressing in those scenes was exceptional, just where you could see everything and feel like it's just such an empty space, but you know someone's hiding in there. I really love that feeling. And so Thanksgiving was a ton of fun, but I don't think it was perfect. So let's get right into the mix. One mix that comes right to the top of my head is the jump scares. There's a few jump scares that are actually very well done. One that made our whole theater jump just out of nowhere, and it's very sudden, and it's actually it's not a false jump scare. There are a few false jump scares, unfortunately, where someone rounds the corner and it's their dad or something like that, where I was like, oh my gosh. I think there was only like one or two, if I can remember correctly. And then another mixed for me here would be the dialogue. You can tell that some of the dialogue is very intentional to be cheesy and almost B-movie-esque, very over the top. But sometimes it feels like, oh, I don't know. Especially with a few characters, some of the high school kids, I was like, that's just weird. Like that just comes off as weird. I'm not sure what they're going for. I don't know if this kid, especially his name's Evan or Evans, he's very over the top, very just douchey. You're not supposed to like him, but he just, I don't know, dude. Sometimes those characters really work in horror. In this one, it didn't work so much for me, but it sold the high school experience to where you're in high school and you're like, yeah, I know kids like that. But sometimes it goes a little too far with the douchiness, with the over the topness. And so it sells it to an extent, and that's why it's in the mixed, is to where something was off about a few of the characters, some of the dialogue, but I just can't quite put my finger on it right now. I don't think any of the characters are exceptional. I don't think any of the dialogue is really stand out perfect dialogue. There's actually a little bit of there's some of the jokes in here are really really funny. Our whole audience was laughing quite a bit, and the audience actually really seemed to enjoy the movie, both the kills and the comedy. And so honestly, I can see a lot of people having issues with the characters and the dialogue. There's no like Laurie Strode level, Nancy Thompson level character, no Sidney Prescott, no any of those like iconic horror characters. But I think John Carver, the slasher killer, could be a pretty good icon later on down the line, depending on if Eli Roth wants to continue. As far as like final girls or heroes in the film, not really. No one's really memorable. The most memorable thing about this movie is the kills and just the way it approaches everything and how much fun it has with the prospect of that. Right now, the only negative I can think of, and I could be editing this tomorrow or uploading it and watch it again, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I missed a huge negative there. The only negative that I can think of off the top of my head is the writing. It felt like there was more to it. It felt like, especially with a few characters, a few loose ends, there was more to it, and the movie ended a little abruptly for me. And so I'd say like the last 10 to 15 minutes, the killer reveal is actually really quite good. I really liked it. It surprised me. I had my finger on one or two people throughout the film, and I ended up being surprised, which is good, and which I always think you should strive for. You know, being surprised in a horror slasher where it's a murder mystery, you're trying to figure out who did it. But there's just a few loose ends here, a few characters that are just like, you know, dialogue is given at the end of the film, and it's like, oh, that's where they are. And then a few characters just kind of felt like, I mean, obvious red herrings, very obvious red herrings, but some of their behaviors, like, are you just like that much of a douchebag, dude? Like, are you just that much of a dick that you just do that? And obviously, you have to do some of that to get a believable slasher to where anyone could be the killer, you know? But I think that maybe it went a little too far for my liking, to where it's like Scream 6, to where when the killers are revealed in the end of Scream 6, you really sit down and think about it, you're like, okay, how did any of this happen? I think the killer reveal on Thanksgiving is better than Scream 6. As much as I am a whore for Ghostface and Scream, I do think that how it all plays out in Thanksgiving is better. Anyways, I don't want to draw comparisons to Thanksgiving as its total own movie. Some of it just didn't quite work for me, a few loose ends, and I felt like I'm really trying to figure out a non-spoiler way to say this. And so as soon as this thing happened, I was like, oh, this is what's going to happen. You know, there's a certain component to the killer reveal that needs to happen in order for this to make sense. And it didn't happen. And I was like, okay, so how come this thing happened on this? It has to do with a live stream. That's all I'll say. It has to do with this live stream. How come this happened on the live stream? How is that able to happen? And maybe it was just me. Maybe I caught something that I tricked myself into thinking I was smarter than I was. And so for me, that was a little weird. There's just a few things with the killer reveal, as always with most killer reveals, where you're like, huh, how did that happen? How did that happen? But honestly, that's all I can think of right now. Again, this won't be for everyone. It's very balls to the wall with the gore, very over the top. But I do think there's some great, genuine, suspenseful sequences in this film. and a lot of fun to be had. It's just so goofy and so over the top that you just enjoy it. The sooner you admit to yourself, the sooner you let yourself go and just say, this is going to be over the top, it's going to be fun, the more you have fun with the movie and the quicker you can get to having a good time with this movie. So I would highly recommend Thanksgiving. I had such a blast with this movie. I need to work on a new rating system because overall I give it like an 8.5, but then I give it 4 stars on Letterboxd. I don't know. I need to work on a new rating system. I'd give it 8.5 out of 10 or 4 out of 5 if I was doing that. Maybe I will. Who knows? But I really had a good time with Thanksgiving. And if you're a horror fan, especially a slasher fan, I would recommend checking this one out. There's a lot of fun to be had here, a lot of merit to be seen. Some of my favorite kills of the year, some of my favorite suspenseful sequences of the year, and I think we're going to get a very memorable slasher villain with John Carver. Have you guys seen Thanksgiving? If so, what have you thought about it? What did you think about it? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Let me know down in the comments below. Am I talking crazy for my negatives? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you guys. I am working on my October horror movie ranked. There's quite a bit of editing going into that, since it's like 35 movies, I think. So that will, I see this every year. Anyways, guys, my name's Carter. Have a great rest of your day.